Firstly, thank you to everybody who has made it here today. To come out like this on a rainy monsoon evening in Namma Bengaluru is an act of courage and it's an act of determination. And it's wonderful to see every single one of you here. I'm so touched and I'm very, very happy that you're here. This is a bit of a dreamlike situation for me. I mean, I've come, I think, like all of you, many times to BIC before. I've taken part in book discussions, I've come to attend book talks, but to actually be here in BIC with my book, with such a panel to talk about it, with all of you, it's kind of unreal. It kind of feels very dreamy, very unreal. And I'm so grateful to everybody who helped to make it happen. My publishers, Westland, my agent, Jayapriya, my classmates, my colleagues, all of you who watched, my family. And yeah, I know my sister will not forgive me otherwise. My family, everybody who has been here for me through the years. I'm just so grateful to all of you. It's wonderful that you're here now. And this is a time which is both happy and vulnerable. Vulnerable because it's a personal book. It's a book which I felt I had a story which I needed to tell, coming out from Doordarshan, the early days of Doordarshan back in the 1980s, going through that government owned media, through private television, the glorious early years, and the later years of private television, which have not been quite so glorious. I've been sharing my view of that. It's a very personal way of saying what I have been doing, what I feel about it also. I'm sharing those opinions. So it is a vulnerable time, really. But I'm happy also because of the way the book has been received so far. First, the announcement of the book was, I got a very warm response. I love that. And the few people who have had a chance to read it so far have said nice things. So I'm really happy about that. And while I do hope that some of that niceness is because perhaps you liked the way I used to report, or you like the stories, and you like the book, I do hope a certain part is because of that. But I also know that some of it is nostalgia. I think I could use the word nostalgia for those of you who are old enough to remember the way it was when television actually carried videos talking about communal harmony and unity and diversity, when news was not a shouting match, when we got the facts from a news bulletin, not all the facts, because there was only Doordarshan, so what the government said went. So not all the facts, but we got the facts without the drama, without the shouting. You remember that. And also maybe it reminds you of your younger self, the self you were then and the world you were in then. So maybe it brings back some memories of that time. So whatever reason it is, I'm just happy that the people have had a warm response so far. And the things that I am talking about in the book, it was, of course, a time when television was different, when the world around was different, when our country was very different. So I have been talking about that. I talk about that in the book, the way things changed. I also look at the reasons why it changed. What made television news change from what it was to what it is today? I've looked at some of those factors, both internal to the television channels and external, the environment around, society, the government. I've looked at those changes and I've tried to say what can be done to make things better. Because I think it's no secret, you'll soon find out in the book, that I think that right now things are not better. I think things are worse right now. But what can be done to make things better, to try and bring it back to what it was? You may or may not agree with what I have said, but I'm sure that all of you at some stage have given it some thought when you're watching the news and wondering what's going on. Why is it like this? I'm sure you've all thought about it at some stage. And this panel, I'm so excited to have this panel here to talk about my book. We'll get more into the details of the book during that. Sharda, you're the definition of feisty. She is a sports reporter who is unlike any other sports reporter. She tells it like it is. She has that courage, that fearlessness, as she takes on, I mean, like Danya and I may have reported a lot about the sport of politics, but she's talked a lot about the politics of sport. Quite directly, she's got that courage that if you'd been a batter, if you'd been a bats person, if there's such a word, you would have faced the West Indian bowlers of the 70s, 80s, and 90s without a helmet. You'd have said, bring it on. Bring it on. And my little Sharda story is she focuses on sports. She does. She can report anything she likes, but she focuses on sports. We met once on the day of the tsunami, the day the tsunami happened back in 2004. I think it might have been at Chennai airport. She was heading to Andaman and Nicobar to report. I was heading further down the coast towards southern Tamil Nadu to report. So she met me. We were literally kind of ships passing in the night. She's a sports reporter, and she asks me as we're passing, Maya, how do you report television news? And I was so thrilled that, first of all, she thought she could learn how to report television news in 2 minutes, which she probably could have. But I was very flattered that she thought I could explain it to her in 2 minutes on the way to catch our respective flights. I mean, I was very happy. Thank you, Sharda, for that vote of confidence. Danya, Danya Rajendran is amazing. Maybe partly amazing because you worked for several years with Times Now, right? I mean, that's amazing. Let's just leave it as amazing. Amazing is a nice way to say it. She worked with them. She learned a lot there. And from what she learned, she decided to open that feisty news portal, The News Minute. She co-founded that. I think they like it. I think they like what you're doing because she takes on the authority, she takes on the ruling party and also the opposition. I don't think News Minute kind of focuses on people based on party line or anything. They say things which others wouldn't dare to. They take on the authorities. It's a cliche, but they speak truth to power. And as a result, you've got some lovely cases against you, right? A lot of legal attention. Everybody loves you, Danya. I'm sure the lawyers do too. You're giving them a very good living. And I'm saying all these nice things about Danya, despite the grief she has caused me over the years. I'll just give you one example out of many. Who remembers that whole Ballari illegal mining, the whole scandal? It went on and we were constantly doing stories on that. And then the Lokayukta, Justice Santosh Hegde, had brought out a report. He was going to release this report on, let's say, a Thursday. He was going to release that report on Thursday. Names would be named. Chief ministers, MLAs. We'd get what was going on. This was for Thursday. So we planned, I'll be here on Thursday. I'll be doing this live report. I'll be talking about this. Keep that data ready. Then on Wednesday night, Danya gets hold of the report. Now, I don't know how, I still don't know how, but she got hold of the report and she started reporting it, starting giving details. And anyone who's been in TV journalism or really in any competitive industry can imagine the loving calls I got from my desk in Delhi. Maya, dear, do you have any information? Do you know anything about the Lokayukta report? Could you also start giving us details? But I forgive you, Danya, and I still admire you for all that. Professor Rajiv Gowda, he is a delight. He's been a delight to have on my shows over the years whenever I wanted a sane, reasonable, thoughtful, political voice. Yes, they do exist. They are rare. They may be endangered. If you want, you take a photograph, just to be on the safe side. But Professor Gowda, you give hope that there are some politicians who actually get into politics to try and make things better for the people. It's a kind of amazing thought now. It's like now, I think in journalism, when we find a report that shows both sides or talks about different views, we're so excited. Wow, they gave both points of view. Similarly, with Professor Gowda, I think to have a politician who really does seem to walk the talk and believe in the things he does, I think that's wonderful. I'm very, very happy to have him here. And you must be a huge misfit. In the era of TV news, have you ever shouted on television?
Once or
Oh, okay, all right. So let's hope today is not one of those days.
I am local here, so I have.
We try to make it subtle. We try to kind of, make it not so obvious. But yes, thank you for being here. So I'll just start by reading a short excerpt of. This is the very beginning of the book. Like I said, it goes from my Doordarshan days in the 1980s to where we are today. And so this is literally the opening page. And now, said a suave and articulate Prannoy Roy, sitting in a TV studio in New Delhi. We go across to Maya Sharma in Bangalore. Maya Sharma in Bangalore? That's me. I stood there, my heart pounding with nervous excitement, feeling anything but suave and articulate. Millions of people were watching this telecast across India, which meant that they would be watching me. It was the year 1989, and we were part of the first ever national TV coverage of election results, which included live inputs from reporters across India. Most of us were going live for the very first time. It's something that's so taken for granted these days. It's a staple of news bulletins now. TV reporters can go live in a few seconds through their phones. This kind of reporting is a mainstay of news bulletins. But in the early years, it just couldn't happen that way. This was the very beginning of live news reporting from the ground in this country, on Doordarshan, the only TV network the country had. Yes, the only one. If people were watching television in India at that time, they were watching us. 3 big cameras were trained on me, connected by cables to the huge outdoor broadcasting or OB van that sent the signal from Bangalore to Delhi to then be telecast across the country. Bright TV lights lit up the place where I was standing on a platform in Cubbon Park, right next to the Election Commissioner's office. My hair was in a neat ponytail, and I was wearing a new outfit bought for the occasion. I remember the yellow kurta had orange embroidery. I was also wearing an earpiece and an earnest expression. I clutched the mic. We are advised to hold it only in one hand, but I was probably clinging onto it with both of mine. Standing next to me was Lawrence Fernandez, veteran socialist leader and the younger brother of well-known political leader George Fernandez. I had rehearsed this moment. Nothing could go wrong. I heard my name. That was my cue. Thank you, Prannoy. I managed the thank you smoothly enough. I began my conversation with Lawrence Fernandez. He was saying that there had been malpractice during the voting process in Bangalore. In which constituency was my smooth question in response? At least that was the plan. The thought of those millions of viewers filled my mind, froze my brain, tripped my tongue. And for the life of me, I couldn't get out the word constituency. Lawrence Fernandez looked down at this flustered young reporter. He was very tall. He looked down at this flustered young reporter, saying, and prompted me with a kindly, which constituency? I nodded with deep gratitude. My TV news career didn't need to end before it had really begun. We proceeded with the interview from there smoothly enough. I had stumbled on live TV and lived to tell the tale.
Thank you for that, Maya. I think this was a strange beginning to a panel because it's not often that the author actually speaks at length about the panelists. So I think we should return the favor.
It's a habit. An anchor and a mic, you can't. I couldn't resist.
But we should return the favor to Maya with our story about her, right? Sharada, what is yours?
So, because 89, when she's standing on that podium, I was most probably, what month was it? Just
November.
November. That's when actually I began my career in midday November 1989. And then NDTV showed up and you kept watching. And anyway, I got a job, moved a job, and I came to Bangalore to cover a test match. I think it was for India Today, so it was in early 2000. And of course, there are no mobile phones. And I'm standing and I don't have my accreditation card to get into the stadium. So I'm standing outside the Cubbon Park ground, or maybe I was inside this, but I couldn't go to the press box. And suddenly I see this person coming down. And of course, I know her because it's Maya Sharma from NDTV. And obviously, I assume she would. I said, "Oh, you're Maya Sharma from NDTV. Listen, I am so and so. I've come from India Today. I don't have my accreditation card. Can you please go to the press box and get it for me, please?" And she was a bit flustered as to who is this person whom she has never met, who has assumed like, yes, you are Maya, of course. And she went up and either she told somebody, I don't know, I don't think she remembers this, but she actually went up and made sure that my accreditation card gave me access to the press box very kindly, was delivered to me by somebody. And then she went and did her work. So whatever live report or whatever she was trying to do, I literally remember seeing, I recognized nobody in that crowd except Maya Sharma from NDTV.
Okay, I have a Maya Sharma story to share. I don't think Maya would remember the story at all. So I used to be with Times Now, yes. I worked there for 8
You
years.
admit it, yes,
Yes.
yes. You're not denying it.
Yeah, I worked there for 8 years. Thankfully, Times Now has deleted all of its stories online. You cannot find any of those.
How did you do
reports.
that?
When Arnab left Times Now, he just wiped everything off. I'm actually very glad because I don't want people to discover some of those old stories. Yeah. So when I was in Chennai as a reporter and I shifted to Bangalore in 2009. So this was a time when again this whole Bellary thing was happening. A little
Yeah,
after
yeah,
that.
rub it in. Yes, remind me,
No,
why
but
don't you?
Yediyurappa was going to resign, I think. God, every day we would wait outside his house. And sometimes at 9, 10 in the night when he would come back from somewhere. And this was one of those important days, something was happening. All of us, as usual, were waiting. So Maya, being a senior, she may not be doing the night shift. There'll be a junior reporter, but that day Maya was also there. She's been waiting for many hours, and Yadurappa's car just goes past us. He doesn't talk. But then the car suddenly stops. Yadurappa walks out, and then he just goes to. He sees that she's sitting there, so he goes to her and talks to her, not as a bite. Just he felt bad that she had been sitting there for that many hours, and he just
Maya
came and
Sharma
spoke.
from NDTV.
Yes, so he actually came and spoke to her and said, whatever. I don't know what he said,
He didn't ask me for a pass.
but I'm like looking, and I was like, I want to be that. There are thousands of television journalists swarming all over. Everybody's just putting their mics. So many of them just disappear in front of our eyes without us knowing their names. What did they do in their career? But I thought, I want to be Maya Sharma that day. Yeah. So, the book, if you want to add.
Now, this is really getting worrisome. I mean, I thought,
In the interest of equity. Actually, I don't have anything so spectacular. I, grew up in Bangalore, and in 1983, I think is when we got TV here. And in 1984, I left for the US and came back in 2000. And so I missed the entire era when, especially English television, moved to those cassettes and then to private TV channels coming in, etc. But when I did come back and enter politics, it's been a long journey. When I would ask people, who should I speak to when there's a need to be seen as credible on the national stage, they would say, you have Maya Sharma in Bangalore. And that, I think, was sufficient. Anytime I was invited to the office top, Sherlock pub, what was it called? Oops.
our office was on top of a pub called Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. So,
I discovered it very late because none of us knew it was there.
I would show up. And I have very good memories of reasonable discussions before the world of TV news went haywire.
I'm that generation, the haywire one.
Haywire generation.
Yes. So the book actually takes you through Maya's days at Doordarshan, then the initial days of NDTV, and then when more private channels burst into the scene, and finally the last few years of NDTV. So when you're reading it, she will take you through the whole life
The
cycle
last few years of NDTV, you've decided that.
Yeah, in my mind, yes. Okay, so your time at Doordarshan, you are also critical about that time, right? In the sense that you are saying it was a government channel, so there were clear restrictions on what we could cover. For the audiences, like what are the bits that you would want to recall from the book?
It was definitely a government run channel, and we did news for the government. We put out news that the government wanted to be put out in a very non-sensational, calm, measured way. In fact, I think I mentioned in the book, it was like a press release. The early news bulletins were like press releases with a bit of some visuals thrown on. So that was a large part of our work. And it became very tricky for the regional Kendra, the regional Doordarshan Kendra, because as you know, Karnataka very often, to its difficulty, has a different party ruling the state than is the one in the center. So that may be difficult for politicians in the area. It may be difficult for what the state gets from the center. It's also very difficult for a news editor sitting here in Bangalore, trying to keep the local politicians happy while serving his national boss. So there were some things which we just couldn't show, couldn't do. We'd cover the ruling party at the center. If a central minister came down, we covered everything. From the time he landed to anything we did, we had to do that. But because we were, there was a time also when I'd gone to South Africa to cover Nelson Mandela's inauguration. And it was such an exciting thing. And I did a story on the swearing in. I had included clips of world leaders. And one of those world leaders happened to be Benazir Bhutto of Pakistan. So the Doordarshan editors looked at that and said, mm. So they dropped the story and ran the visuals, on such an important day. But I will say also that we were young and we were wanting to make a difference. So we did start our own news channel. We did start our own news program. We started our own news program called Insight. I don't know if anyone remembers that. There was Karnataka Chitra. We started to do stories and we started breaking news and doing things which otherwise wouldn't happen. My husband Nandu here went after Veerappan for the very first time a television channel had done that. He came back and discovered this police escort had all been killed. They'd all been killed. He ran up to feed the visuals he had to Delhi. He called the editor in Delhi and said, I've got this. It's an exclusive. We've got this. The response was, we don't do crime stories. Yeah, so there were problems, but it was the only channel and we did what we could.
Yeah, actually, that story about Veerappan, you must read it. I think 6 police officials were killed, right? But it was also these were also the good times, and you were stars. In fact, you even got marriage proposals, or at least one for sure, which you said in the book, because you all were the Doordarshan stars, right?
Yes. Like I said, if people were watching TV at that time, they were watching us. And we had a program called Insight, which came on just before Chitrahar. Who remembers Chitrahar? Who didn't watch? So that would come out at 8 o'clock. Insight came on at 7:45. So anyone who wanted to watch Chitrahar, they'd be watching us, and we'd be kind of, And I was young. People would watch carefully. They'd say, "You're so simple. You don't wear nail polish." That was a level of. So I got this very sweet letter from an army officer in Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, proposing marriage. It was a very decent, very nice letter, very sweet letter. So I asked Nandu to reply. He did give a very sweet, very decent reply. He did reply very politely, I'm not, it was not a sleazy thing. And because remember, there was no SMS. Nobody was WhatsApping me or sending me messages or DMs on X or kind of responding. It was a letter written, care of Doordarshan Bangalore. That is the way they reached us. Those were the good old days when journalists could say things and not get immediately trolled. You would know. You would have missed the trolling, Dani, I think, in those days.
Yes, maybe. So you all made a transition to private channels. You do explain in the book how it felt then, right? Because this was a secure job, though, okay, there were differences and you felt that there were things that you could not do. But even then, moving to a private channel was a huge decision at that time, right?
We had government jobs. We were central government officers. We were gazetted officers who could sign things and all that. If anyone's run after a gazetted officer to get something signed, we could do it. I mean, not for ourselves, but we could do that. We would get a pension. We would, it's like, wow. And frankly, because we had joined, Bhaskar Ghosh brought us in, but the local people didn't really necessarily welcome us or want us there. So even working was sometimes voluntary. It was very self-motivated. So to leave the security of a government job and go into this brand new world of private television, it was considered a risk by some, but I think at that age we felt it a bigger risk to stay behind and maybe regret in years later that we couldn't do as much journalism as we wanted to. I think that was.
So the book also has a couple of examples. Maybe you should have included more about the danger that journalists face. I think one, and also as a spouse of a journalist, what you have to endure when the spouse goes for very dangerous missions, right? Can you quickly tell us about the Rajiv Gandhi assassination and what happened?
Nandu has caused me a lot of trouble in life. I mean, husbands do, but one was the Veerappan thing. He disappears into the forest, pre-mobile, and he comes back and we didn't know because, again, no WhatsApp, no breaking news. Then we got to learn that these police had been killed. These were police he had been with. Anything could have happened. I mean, grief for the families and of those policemen. It's so sad. When Shivarasan was located in Konankunte, in what is now busy Kanakpura Road. Nandu got wind of it and he went there with his team. And I said, okay, all the best. It was like, I think, late afternoon or early evening when he went. He didn't come back. He didn't come back all night. And no phone, nothing. Where was he? Where in Konankunte was he? What was happening? Woke up in the morning and I got this call. I was very sleepy. I got a phone call from the Hindu correspondent saying, Nandu's all right. This is a landline to landline. I said, why wouldn't he be all right? You know. Then in the morning, the Hindu paper carried the Doordarshan correspondent and camera person was shot at from inside the house. Huh. So then my father and I, we got into the car and we drove to Konankunte, followed the crowd, found out where the event was happening, looking around for Nandu, and there he is up on the roof, about to do a piece to camera. So he's looking at us like this, and another time was when he went to Jammu and Kashmir during the height of the militancy there, yeah, height there.
Sharda, so before the event started, somebody was telling me that, so many insights into how the journalists work and what are the backstories, right? Because what people see eventually is what we write, what we report. I think books like these do bring it to the public, right? Like, what is the trouble that people have to go through?
Yeah, and the thing about a book like this is that you will understand the absolute madness that happens, particularly in television and live television. So while this is before the digital age where you're not having to file a report every 5 seconds because they're saying we have to upload live, we have to upload, we are doing a blog. There's nothing. It's the TV guys which they always tell you that no matter, we are just talking for 5 minutes, but we are spending the whole day running around. We're on our feet. We're chasing people. Whereas your reporters, you're sitting, we're just picking up the phone and calling, picking up the phone and putting the phone, or not answering, not answering. Okay, answered. And you're done. Pretty much. Not, I'm just talking sports reporters trying to read some lame story. Not
Don't be too modest.
Yes, not the level of sort of physical exertion that the reporters do and how quickly they've got to get stuff up. The great thing when I moved to Delhi is that I got called for to go on NDTV for a big fight or something like that. And that's when you realize all the crazy stuff that's happening behind the scenes, which which the book tells you in absolute detail of how to get things out. Also, the great sort of political, I don't know if it's too early to mention this, the sort of big star anchor sort of syndrome and what happens. And as a sports journalist, you always were like hanging out with the TV guys. Okay, what's happening? What's the news? Somehow they seem to know a little bit more than you did. God knows how, because someone was they were chatting. They were at a place. Some vain athlete was giving them an interview, and they heard something. Anyway, so you always heard about the star anchor syndrome, and I was so happy when I read the book that yes, exactly what I thought it was there. That they were always sort of all the people that did all the legwork and the fixing of the appointment, and it's almost like you became the fixer, for the big. So that is actually the most masala laden kind of part of the book which you must read.
So there is this chapter. I'll come to Mr. Rajiv Gad also after I ask a question to Maya. So there's this chapter called "Who Calls the Shots." So I realized I've undiagnosed PTSD after reading that chapter. I'm like, oh my God, this is like traumatic reading this chapter.
Sweet memories.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why that chapter is very important. Now, there's a lot of anger against the mainstream media, especially now after the Jantar Mantar protests, etc. There is a whole realization about the damage that they're doing to society, to social fabric, etc. But this book, what Maya has written, takes it beyond that, right? It's not just about the star anchor being bigoted, communal, just being rude and shouting at on television. It's about how they've ruined the television economy itself. I will leave it to Maya to explain.
Well, essentially, I mean, like any corporation, you don't really know the salaries of the top guys, of the top stars. But it was a communications company. So word would sometimes get around and it would be like, huh. When different TV companies are not doing great now in terms of revenue, and advertising is not as much as it used to be. Traditional television production is very expensive. But when you heard that, like, the budget for the salary of a star anchor was that much, you'd only be human thinking, really? That's not fair. So also the programmings that they did, they would get a totally different level of budget. I mean, I think maybe some of you who've been on the programs I've done here, and we do it kind of rough and dirty. I'd be there with a mic, there'd be a couple of cameras, and I would do it on the ground. We would not necessarily have a set. And we'd be done what we did what were known as zero budget shows. Two of my colleagues are here, Kumar and Govind, the camera persons from NDTV. So yeah, there they are. So they know what it, and Manjunath, huh? So what they would do is they would do this zero budget shows with somehow, we would somehow do it. But when the star anchors would come, it would be a lavish venue booked for lakhs together, lights, cameras hired, equipment, and it was like, oh, okay. And to add insult to injury, when you were told, but you know, your program doesn't look quite the same. Or a star anchor would have a whole retinue of people to do the research, to do the, which we didn't have.
I mean, I can go on and on about it, but I just want to add that there's much more sinister stuff. For example, a freelancer from a district who actually spends the day getting you news, and his bill would be like 6,000 rupees at the end of the month because you get 500 rupees for a footage, let's say, and you give this much in 6,000. They would delay that payment for 6 months, 1 year. They would not pay that 6,000. Sometimes we in the bureaus would give that money because we don't know how to deal with it. Taxi drivers would not get money. We will take our own money and give them. And when the star anchor comes, just descends, there are times when helicopters have been booked for them. Yes, so many times for flood coverages, they would have entourage of people with them, production assistant, production controller, this, that. And we would be told to do the bare minimum with zero budgets. Right? So I used to have a trick. I never used to hand over numbers of any big, those days numbers were a treasure, not like now. I would make sure that nobody has a number of a top politician. And I would tell a top politician, do not pick the calls from my office in Delhi. Talk only to me. So, I mean, that's the only way you could make sure that the bureau has its importance. But I want to ask you about the star anchor phenomenon. You stopped going on television debates a few years ago. How has the star anchor impacted your life?
So I'm still officially a national spokesperson for the Indian National Congress, and I've done TV debates for about maybe 10 years, starting in the last years of the Manmohan Singh UPA government, and then of course through many years of the Modi Sarkar. And, but you know, it's never changed. Where as a Congress spokesperson, you're always being attacked. You know, it doesn't matter which era it was and whose responsibility it should have been. The other thing is, in most of those years, we would either have an OB van showing up, and one after the other, or I'd be running to shows. And when I would come to what shall we say, your Times Now channel on Church Street, to the little studio there, I would have my colleague Ram Prasad stand next to the camera and keep telling me, calm down, calm down, calm down. Because
This is post 2014, right?
Yeah, well, it would have been even before that as well. And it was always because the provocations were unbelievable, right? And, and it was like, this is not a reasonable question. And then over the years, it became a situation where the star anchors, especially the one that I'm referring to,
he or she who shall not be named.
Why grant him that? Anyway, the point is, he's the guy who, when arrested, he kept shouting, "Call the Supreme Court" or whatever it was.
That guy.
Anyway, so the point is that he would not allow you to speak. There would be a provocation. Some other side would say something even worse, and then for 15 minutes he'd want you to stew and get angrier and angrier and angrier, such that when finally you're given a chance, so then you'd sort of burst out in anger. But the point being that that's not the way to have any kind of a discussion on the kernel of the issue. You'd never get there. It was just drama. It was just, ultimately we became entertainment for the, because even when I would question whether this is TV news at all, because it is like every evening, instead of ever getting into an issue, you just, put a bunch of people together and let them get at it, that sort of thing. And it was just very, very, disappointing for someone who's trying to be both the professor and the politician, trying to be reasonable on TV. And then once Twitter and things like that emerged, the kind of hatred that we get for putting out a reasonable view on TV. I went home one day and I showed my children, there's a message from somebody on Twitter which says, "I hope your children hate you." And they looked at me and said, "How does he know?"
No, because you used the word entertainment. So I was told in the beginning of my TV career, said that news is not just information, news is infotainment, which is you should give information and entertain. So I have done crazy stuff like Dhanya chases Leila. Leila is basically a cyclone. Okay, so I am supposed to be in a car and I am supposed to shoot like this throughout, and Dhanya, you know why I'm happy that the footage has disappeared, right? This is one of the least problematic things. Yeah, but I just want to ask you that NDTV, some would say boring, but even then, when all these private channels came, the others, like me, for example, who was doing this infotainment business, did you feel like you have to do, induce more drama into this, or did you feel no, we are better off like this?
We were different. We gave a different choice to them. We were told very clearly by the top management. We had that tag, "You don't have to shout to be heard." We were told, I mean, like way back in 1991 when we were given guidelines for election reporting. It's there in writing. I'm a pack rat, so I do have it still. It's like, if you have politicians from different parties, make sure they don't get into an argument. Let them make their points without it becoming, let it be a debate, not an argument. Right? Can you imagine? Now, I mean, when a successful debate is one when people are shouting, when people are thumping tables and, everyone's talking at the same
Hitting
time.
each other. In Telugu, they're actually eating each other these days.
So we were told, it was very much a corporate thing that you don't have to shout to be heard.
But did you feel the pressure because everybody else around you were unnecessarily fast?
Oh
and
man, yes. There was this one reporter who got hold of the Lokayukta report before me a day before. It was hell. It was hell. Anyway, let's see. And it was very hard because they would come out with something, and I have this very old-fashioned belief that I'd rather be right than first, which is not necessarily a thing that TV news is known for. I would rather come out afterwards having checked. Is that so? Is that the case? And then say it. I wanted that if I've said it, it's true. But they would come out with the news, and the pressure from head office then for a confirmation or for a denial, it was a huge amount of pressure. It was very, very tempting to sometimes just go ahead and say it. But the fear of getting it wrong and losing a reputation which you worked so hard to be credible, to then just because you want to say this is going to be the next chief minister of Karnataka, when you can't predict a thing like that. It was a lot of pressure, especially when the other channels came. It was a lot of pressure, but internally we were told, cool it, it's okay.
This is going on YouTube, I guess, but I will just say it. My favorite story was in Tamil Nadu. I used to get calls saying, give breaking news, give breaking news. So there's nothing breaking. So I would say, Stalin is upset with Aragiri. Or next day I'll say Aragiri is upset with Stalin because they are anyway upset with each other every day.
And it would be true. It would be true.
So I would just give breaking news.
It would be true.
And there is a whole chapter where she deals with sports coverage. I mean, she writes about it with love. I had absolutely no love for covering sports. I will come to you also on that. IPL coverage, daily IPL match, we have to go find people who are celebrating. I'm not even kidding you. I bought drums and that PP and kept in office. There's been Nandanam College outside my office. So if whatever Chennai team wins a match, I'll call those students and come say, now celebrate. And I used to give them the drums. And then I'll be on live saying, see, behind me, there are people of Chennai celebrating. Because where am I supposed to find people in the street? But you wrote very lovingly about sports coverage.
Because you covered that, then you got to watch the IPL match. I mean, wow.
Oh, I was never inside the stadium.
Also, for 17, 18 years, we didn't have to bother about celebrations in Bangalore for RCB.
Maybe that's why.
It was smooth. I mean, I love the team, but it was smooth.
Sharda, so we spoke about the star anchors and the problems, right? So when these CJP protests were happening in Delhi, I think it was for the first time that I saw so much of anger directed at this kind of vitriol on television. But just 2 weeks into it, I think they are back with double vitriol. and they're making fun of everyone who made fun of them, I don't think things are going to change. Did you think 2 weeks ago that perhaps some of them
No, not
would?
for a
No.
second. Because I think the television coverage now, even in there are programs that are running on some channels in which you're having discussions like, who does he think he is? Why is he playing like this? Did you see this? This is outrageous. He should be sacked. Okay, all the time in press boxes we'll say, yeah, he should be sacked. He's useless. What is this short and all? But we're not going. That's not on television. That's not what you're telling people. You have to be a little bit. So I don't for a moment believe that though that is going to change. It's almost like that kind of television has its own constituency of what Ravish Kumar calls housing society ke uncle. So that constituency is not going to give up on their heroes, and that the fact that and the kids, the Gen Z that came out in the CJP protest, they don't even look at that television. They don't watch it. It's nothing. It's not even there in their sort of in their radar. They don't care about it. But they have, though, the channels that are there. They think that this is our constituency and it's not going away. They're almost like a political party by themselves. They are like the ultras of football that you have. These are like the ultras of the news business. That they're not going to go, and this is what we have to keep feeding. That we have to keep feeding that beast every day with something. So some outrage of Russia is sponsoring or Soros or whatever, you keep whipping it up again.
UAE, US and China this time.
US and China. And the response of the Gen Z protest was hilarious, because they say, okay, I have bought chai. I'm sending you QR code, Mr. Xi Jinping. And 40 rupees you have to send me. So this, even though they get mock them and make fun of them, it's like the uncle society, the housing society, uncle and aunties have to be sort of entertained almost every day, in that sense, entertained.
Mr. Gaura, every event we go for, people ask why are people still watching mainstream media? Why can't we boycott it, etc.? But there is a utility of that even now, which is why even politicians, though you may have boycotted, people from your party still have to go, right?
Do they have to?
No one has to. You are, most often you go partly to build your own career, to be more visible, to be more impactful, and for everyone to talk about you and say, hey, he did really well, etc. That sort of thing. And so it's one of the lateral routes to political progress. So people do want to be on TV, etc. Part of the reason is, I think, if you go to people's homes, like during my Lok Sabha election campaign, you walk into someone's house, the TV is on continuously. The difference is, it's mostly tuned to a Kannada channel. It's not necessarily tuned to a national English channel. And I would say that that was always sobering, that I would only do national TV channels, and the actual reach was fairly limited, but very influential, right? So that influential part is what made a huge difference. But today, anyone who's in the search of news is getting it on her computer, on her telephone, and for the life of me, I don't know what's emerging in the future, because I'd like to know and jump on that wave. But the basic point is, if not for YouTube and Insta and the ability of independent voices to break what has become the monopoly of crony capitalists and their ownership of the media, how would we get any kind of balance, any kind of alternative perspective? You would believe that during Operation Sindoor, we had taken Karachi, that Lahore's fort was ours, our flag was flying there, or something like that. Those were the stories that ran on the mainstream national English channels. And so those sorts. So in that sense, the world has changed. And so while we talked about many other things, technology and what it's done to our readership of the newspaper, what it's done to our watching of television news. So we tune in at any time, and we may only catch a little bit of a segment here and there, but it's probably worsened the situation for anchors and for panelists, because now you really want to have that sound bite that goes viral, and that worsens things in a different way, because you're not actually again trying to get to something. But one of my pet peeves about these, these TV debates used to be how anchors would sort of talk down and constantly try to show off as if they knew more, or would not give you enough time to explain the nuances of something. And so those sorts of issues, or they would bring in some specialist who obviously knew much more than someone who had to figure out a topic 5 minutes before the show. And and then they were like, no, you don't know your stuff. Well, of course you know more, but the thing is, we're trying to give you a point of view, and listen, don't cut us off. That sort of thing is gone by the wayside. And there was also a time when you could actually, I remember coming to NDTV's studio in Delhi, and you would see a face-off between Jaitley and Sibal or something like that. And it would be a very detailed discussion on matters of substance with a few, dramatic innuendos or something like that tossed out. But those sorts of things have become history. And it's rare now for those, a little more, for us, anything to get us to tune in for a long period of time. What are you going to get out of that shouting match? That really is the question that I think the mainstream channels need to ask.
I just want to say one thing also, that if when anything happens now, where do you go and look for news? Like just news. When it's international news, because of what's happened in the Gulf recently, everyone goes to Al Jazeera, and you've seen that's happened. It's been such a dramatic swing away from even BBC and CNN that people will say, okay, they'll tell us what's going on. But in India, where do you go for like just factual news? A flood has happened, an airplane has crashed, or whatever. Where do you go? So that's when you're switching to digital or independent news sites, or Twitter maybe. You're thinking PTI, ANI. They're the sort of institutions that you would refer to. I know. I know, because there's sort of references in this to, I think ANI was there at your Mandela inauguration. They were one of the very few agencies that had gone. So, you're saying, now, where do you go? Yeah.
But
So,
just to
yeah.
fill in that gap, that pause, I'll just tell you some of the ways channels would deal with issues, right? So I head the Congress Party's research department, and before every session, we'd provide a note on these are the major issues that you need to take up in Parliament between the previous session and now. And in the early days, in the mid 24, around 2015 or so, we'd still give out printed copies to our members of Parliament. And someone had left their copy in Central Hall, and fell into the hands of the media. And suddenly I get a call from my communications chief saying, there's going to be multiple shows today on the dossier of deception or disruption or something like that. And that's like, these are the issues that need to be taken up. And so the kind of drama around what should be just factual investigations, issues to be raised, that kind of twist was very, very ideologically driven. And in today's era, part of the reason why mainstream media received the kind of treatment from Gen Z at Jantar Mantar is because even the few anchors who had some semblance of balance were essentially driven out. And now there isn't a channel that you can point to and say, this is a balanced channel. You'll get more than one perspective or something like that. You only get conspiracy theories of various kinds.
Maya, in the book, though you have been critical of some of the inner workings of NDTV, for those who haven't read, it's a mystery. Please go read it. Like, what are the sufferings of a bureau reporter and someone as senior as Maya? What happens? So she explains that in detail. But my question is a little beyond that. I find that now there is a glorification of the NDTV days. Whichever interview we put, everybody's talking about the NDTV days. I think there's too much just brushed under the carpet as to the problems with NDTV also. The old NDTV.
Yeah, NDTV. Rajdev refers to this NDTV as NDTV 2.0. So you're talking about the
1.0,
the
yes.
first version. yes, I do get that. I think it's also part of that whole nostalgia trip, firstly. Like, you know, when you get those WhatsApp forwards and you see Salma Sultan with the rose behind her ear, and you think of, Rini Simon or Neeti Ravindran or Geetanjali Iyer, it's like, it may not be an exciting news, but it was a time when it was less painful, less angry, less hostile. So I think that early NDTV was kind of merged. It was a private. It was very calm. It was not sensational or anything like that. So I think that nostalgia for that is definitely there in the way it was looked at. Also, NDTV was among the first. So while Doordarshan may have been the only channel, for a while NDTV was the main English news channel or the main private news channel. So it could do it didn't have that pressure we talked about of competition. It was definitely accused of being quite. Is Sudipto here?
Yes.
Yeah. So Sudipto has written a little piece here where he's been kind of forthright about his views on NDTV at that time.
Oh. Okay.
I found it very interesting because he defines kind of the right wing. He's hiding
He's
now.
hiding, yes.
Behind the book. Hold it up. I mean, I don't want to give you have to read the book, but it's like if you define right wing as being close to the authorities, close to the establishment, then yes, at that stage.
But I still think NDTV wouldn't I think they would delay some of the reporting, but they would not completely ignore it.
So what used to really annoy me is that when they're referring to people by first names, Shashi, it's like, hello, Mr. Tharoor. He's a minister or whatever it is. Call him by his like a formal name. You can call him Shashi later. You can't be referring to these people as Shashi. Fortunately, the Prime Minister didn't go and they say Manmohan and all. We didn't get to that level. But I used to find it, I used to watch NDTV because there was news there. But there's all this name dropping. It used
Access.
to drive me mad. Yeah, seriously.
It's the
Continue.
old boy network, Mizugra.
Yeah, I know. No, because when we were hired for Times Now, what we would be told is that you don't have to be a daughter of an IAS officer or any bureaucrat or a police officer to come here.
There was some. They had a like an acronym that was there. I've forgotten it.
Yeah. So I used to feel proud that, oh, okay, fine, I'm part of this initially. Yeah. So Maya, you also talk about how during your Doordarshan days and NDTV also initially for the first, a lot of years in fact, people would search out for a Doordarshan and come and talk. People would search out for an NDTV and come and talk to you. And towards the end, things started changing a bit, especially when you go for a BJP rally, etc. Today, we have reached Jantar Mantar where people are being like hounded out, right? So how do you see this whole process or the timeline through which TV channels have gone, even NDTV?
Yeah, it was huge. Initially, people were so happy that we arrived with a camera that politicians would delay the inauguration of a scheme. And in the early days, when we arrived from different private channels, they would ask, "Yav Doordarshan idu?" That kind of stuff. It was. They were so happy to see the camera, to see us there, to be recording it. And politicians would come to us at the election commission 6:35 in the morning. Jafar Sharif came at 6:38 and the slot was gone. They would come 12:15 to 12:20. They would come to us because they wanted to be on TV. People wanted to be on TV. I remember, I think one story done by the BWSSB by Nandu. He criticized it. The person had been, but he was so happy to have been on TV that it was like, did you see that? He was like, it was a thing, and it made our life much easier because people wanted to talk to us. We were not. It changed, like you mentioned, when I went to BJP rallies. It was less than welcoming. It was less than. Similarly, when you and your colleagues went to pro-CAA rallies, there was not much love expressed.
The Tejasvi Surya one you're talking
about. The Tejasvi Surya one is when I was kind of go away, you Pakistani channel. But there were some pro-CAA rallies also where Pooja, it was difficult for her.
She was with Republic then.
She was with Republic then.
Yeah.
So it was difficult for her. I mean, you're a feisty lot, so it's okay. But it's hard. And it's debatable because people say that the reporter on the ground is working for that channel, so they get what they get. But I feel it's a little unfair in some ways because, yes, you are part of an establishment which may be questionable, but you're pretty much doing what you're being told to do, and they may have been there for a job.
No, I have to
Yeah,
disagree.
I know you
because of
disagree
your
on
book
that.
itself.
Oh,
In
dear.
the book, you talk about an instance where you wrote your resignation because they did not agree with your story, and that's in your younger days, right? So that's an option not everybody has, but a lot of people do have.
Resignation from DD, not NDTV.
As a central government officer. So I'm just saying that people do have options. Only one thing I disagreed with the book, only one part.
I'm lucky.
Yes, where you talk about how you were hounded when you went for BJP events. And the next paragraph you spoke about Republic being hounded. I think that comparison is not right because we, as reporters, are not dehumanizing people. We are not pitting one against the other, calling someone Khalistani, Canada, Pakistani, CA, etc. So the behavior meted out to them is also because of what they propagate every day, which is hate. But the stuff that we get is only because of political issues. So I think we shouldn't conflate one or the other. What would you think, Sharda?
Yeah, I think it's been very difficult for reporters on the ground of all the news channels that there are, because you're saying that eventually what's also happened with the star anchor phenomenon is that the reporters are getting fewer and fewer. They don't have that many people that are willing to go out and do stories, and whoever's there, you're only told to do it in a particular way. There have been so many instances where recently you've had someone yelling to the anchor and say, first of all, you're telling me to give you when I'm trying to give you information, then you're trying to tell me breaking news though, breaking news though. Kind of, it's
That
happened.
viral video.
Yeah, it happened with a reporter. And I'm telling you what's happened, and you're
No, then
cutting
you'll
it
put
and-
fake news, he said.
Yeah, then you'll put fake news. Yeah, then you'll put fake news in it. And I'm standing here and giving you the facts, and then you'll put fake news. Now, this is the reporter talking to the anchor who's going to come into our living rooms every day giving us fake news. I mean, I don't watch news television because what are you going to watch? I mean, there's a channel that's watched in my house, but I won't name the channel. So the pressure on the reporter then becomes that then you don't see them with the mic anymore. That's what started to happen in those in the protest, the CJP protest, is that they started going there with these little Bluetooth kind of mics that, oh, like we are just sort of independent and whatever. It's basically the same people sending their reporters, the same channel sending their reporters. And you'll see that there has also been a completely sports has also got sort of captured by this whole philosophy, ideology, that kind of business about the orange hockey team T-shirt and all the rest of it. So it's just literally spiraling from politics has moved into everything, cinema, culture, all of it.
My final question to Maya, and then I will move to the audiences. Maya, one thing that I really admired about NDTV and even some of the other channels initially was the human interest story, right? You, Uma from Hyderabad, so many of you used to do Moni Deepa, all of you used to do these human interest stories. Can you remember any of those of those stories which you think really change lives? And that's a genre which completely has disappeared, right? Human interest. Other than covering a flood or some sort of calamity, I don't think human interest features anymore.
I don't think we see them now. But these are the stories that I really remember doing. There was one story which I did, which my editors were not too excited about initially. It was a couple in Bangalore who had two sons. Both sons were born blind. One was autistic as well. And the mother, rather than saying, "What has fate dealt me?" she taught them music. And they would sing, and there was joy, and I gave concerts. And it was a story. You talk about changing lives. It changed. It was very emotional. It was also the year my father had died. So I was at an emotional stage also. But I thought, wow, it's like, you see these stories of individual courage. You may see them in snippets, like the young man who gave his life jacket in Kerala to somebody. And, it's like, but to go in depth and do a story like that, it talks about human values. It talks about what can be good, what can be positive. And positive news doesn't make the news these days. And it changed. It could change. Maybe it changed their lives. I think the program did get them more attention and they had more concerts and things like that. It changed me in terms of the way I related to things. I loved doing those stories. Those are the stories I remember the most. The ordinary person, not necessarily the celebrity, but the ordinary person who dealt with what life gave them in their own individual way. I love that. I miss it.
Thank you for the talk. And my question is, how did this shouting match phenomenon start in this news reporting?
Reporting, or you mean the debates?
Yeah, debates basically, like
Huh.
in the Republic and all that you see.
She's closer to it all. But let's just say that NDTV was kind of like the cradle for many big name journalists who went elsewhere. Many of the biggest names in Indian television today started off with NDTV. And when they were with NDTV, they were very different.
I think NDTV suppressed their voices so much and said, do not shout, that after 20 years of being quiet, they're like, nation wants to know now very loudly.
You know, you don't, from you don't have to shout to be heard to we need to shout, So I think one gentleman could possibly be given credit or blame for that entire shift. Because I think initially in the new channel, he was quite mild. He was quite. Then there
I
was a
think
sudden.
Hindi was also doing it simultaneously.
Hmm.
Aaj Tak should take a lot of credit for this also. It's
Let's
not
not
just
take all of the-
yeah. Let's not give it away all the credit to English channels. I think Hindi also did its part. And see, it's the cheapest thing to do, right? Basically, before it used to be costlier because, like he said, the OB vans had to go somewhere. In the last few years, it's become extremely cheap to do these debates because you just tell the guys go on Zoom or StreamYard and then they're just shouting there. So you're not even spending money. You're not even sending an OB van there. Yeah, and I can tell you the violence behind the scenes. I remember there was this assassination attempt on Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, which turned out to be somebody shot a dog a few years ago. You can actually Google it, this really happened. So we were camped outside the Art of Living ashram for days, and assassination attempt, Times of India carried, and everybody had to repeat the same thing. There was a live of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and everybody, you have to put this earpiece. I remember channels fighting, not NDTV, taking out the earpiece, somebody takes out the earpiece, another person puts it. Then another reporter will just come and take it, another person will put it. That was the violence behind the scenes. So we were all taught to be violent. And then
What about that canister outside Parliament? That smoke canister outside Parliament? That was another very embarrassing.
So I think it started with Hindi and English simultaneously.
I think it was just so different from what they had seen so far on Doordarshan or NDTV. It's like, oh, they're actually shouting. And some of the things he shouted were what people felt like shouting themselves. So it resonated. It resonated with them. So they said, hey, let's watch this.
Even Faye was an angry anchor in the beginning. So she had these long monologues where she'd be really angry. So it resonated with people because they wanted that anger, right? Like during a lot of scams during the UPA regime, people wanted that anger. Therefore, they thought this person is reflecting the anger that I feel. And so it became a hit. Now they are not able to go back from it.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for that delightful conversation. Really enjoying the behind the scenes and all the anecdotes. Just thinking about the last couple of days and the Tarun Tejpal conviction, and I think it's really brought to light in some senses the deep polarization that has been happening since 2014, but has kind of got sharpened in 19 and 24. And you spoke about one part of the effects of that polarization, but just want to think about what happens when sort of establishment and anti-establishment media start to corner their constituencies, so to say, and people start to close ranks in a sense, and it becomes. I'm wondering if it also becomes harder to then report and critique those within your own constituency, so to say, quote unquote. Just really thinking about the way Tarun Tejpal is being reported on and how that the discomfort that a lot of people are feeling around it. But yeah, just thoughts on that and how that's been.
I'm not an expert on the subject, but with the reference to the Tarun Tejpal story, I read this incredible book by an Australian writer called Inez Barane, and it says women are a separate nation. So this women are a separate nation, and because this has happened, I understand. I was very puzzled when liberal became a bad word at one point. You know, it became such a bad word. But you're seeing with the Tarun Tejpal, it's almost like all that is coming back. And the most wonderful thing that's happened in these CJP protests is that there is none of this silos. There are kids that want to say whatever they want to say in whichever language, in whichever medium, however they say it. They don't seem to have any silos. They think this is all bullshit. You guys don't know what you're doing. You have ruined the climate, and you've ruined the environment, and we know how what's wrong with the world, and we want you guys to fix it. We want it to be fixed. So the Tarun Tejpal thing is just an example again of a closing of ranks, one way or the other. So I got a message yesterday about when he was the charge was overturned, when he was declared guilty all over again, and someone said Tushar Mehta thumbs up, and I was like, oh my god, this is not good. But and then you have to explain the whole thing as to why it happened and what the whole thing is. But the point is that women are another nation, and that's another issue, and everyone will try and kind of claim their side of it, and so we are on the side of the good and the right and so on. That's my confused view on this.
Yeah, I
I'd like
think
to just
yeah.
jump in on this. Tarun Tejpal has got what he deserved. But I want to go to another dimension of what he introduced, which is sting journalism. As a politician, I think that's one of the worst things that emerged. Look, no. Think about what happened to Bangalore Lakshman. Have you paid attention to that? What actually happens? This guy goes in with wires and says, I want to offer you money for this defense contract. And the guy says, look, I have nothing to do with it. And, if you want to give money to the party, well, go ahead. And that essentially, no one pays attention to the language of what transpired. They just focus on the money being handed over and being accepted. And that destroyed this. I mean, I'm a congressman sympathizing with then BJP president, but that sort of thing constantly, we even are off the record, are often broken, right? People basically go ahead and get you into trouble. And so, so this whole, especially sting journalism, I think is one of the worst developments that could have happened in the media. And I don't know what you all think about that.
Okay. I want to just add, let's keep politics and, what happens to women separately. When we just talk about what happens to women, and especially when it's from liberal men, there is a lot of closing the ranks. We have seen this in the last 10 years, especially, and after the Me Too movement, that, I mean, I have lost a lot of, I wouldn't call them friends, but people who would say, oh, you have written the story because you're moving closer to the BJP. No, these are professors, politicians, so many people, especially the Me Too movement. People have really closed ranks, and that's a horrible thing to do, right? I can understand even doing that for the sake of politics, but women are always the calamity, something that every side is willing to sacrifice. Nobody cares.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another dirty word like liberal is feminist. And if you're called a liberal feminist, it's like, which hole do you sink into?
No, like this current debate in Tamil Nadu, where Udayanidhi Stalin has been arrested for alleged double meaning, which he's saying it is not. The whataboutery going is, oh, but Chief Minister Vijay also used this language. This guy also used. Why didn't you condemn that? Why didn't you condemn that? Nobody is saying that both of them shouldn't be talking this way, because the women should not be spoken about this way, right? That's the whole problem. You can just sacrifice the woman in the larger scheme of things.
The cutting across party lines.
Yeah, so my question for Professor Rajiv Gora, you're talking about the the way television news and ethics have gone to pieces. What would you say for for a politician to get in today who has these ethics and things that you had? How would you feel like standing for elections again? How difficult it is? Is it?
It's elections are an extremely expensive affair, and so basically, our nation is in denial about the costs of democracy, of what it takes to keep democracy going, and so we've created a situation where everything, even the laws don't allow you to raise money openly and legally, right? I contested Bangalore North. I had 33 lakh voters. My limit is 90 lakh rupees. That's how much I can spend, right? And if you look at my election filing, it says I've spent about 30 lakhs, okay? I'll leave it at that. But essentially, what this does is we've created a situation where, the system rewards the tainted and screws the sainted. Okay, so basically we have a situation also where everyone says, "Tum aage badho, hum tumhare saath hai," and that's it. Nobody comes, and especially those who want a cleaner polity, who they will neither give their time or effort. That itself would make a difference. And of course, you need money, and the money is mostly just to keep our campaigns alive. There are events, there's media coverage. And that is actually an interesting one. I didn't get covered by two leading Kannada channels here for my campaign. I'm a candidate from this city because I did not pay them. Okay, so that's another world of paid media that I think if you're shocked by that, don't be. That's at election time, the first people who show up are the, to meet you are the guys who handle marketing for the news channel. Okay. So that sort of things goes on. Anyway, so essentially, if if a political party doesn't support you, if you aren't able to raise enough resources, and which are mega multiples of the amounts that we actually report, you're not in the game. Do I have enough after how was I even able to compete in this? I had to sell a site, which luckily I'd bought for some 10 lakhs 20 years ago. I had to sell it for a certain amount and use the proceeds for completing the campaign. Okay, I'm not sure I should have said that in public, but nonetheless, the point is nobody contributes, right? And whoever gives you money gives it to you with some quid pro quo in mind. So you end up in this situation. I mean, Kejriwal seems to have come out of this, but why on earth did someone who campaign against corruption end up going to jail on charges of corruption? Because we haven't fixed electoral funding, and that's the root cause of corruption in the system from top to bottom and on one side to the other. So that until we fix that, we are all armchair idealists who have no clue to what it takes to run the country, run the democracy.
Yeah, that's actually very true. When we were covering Karnataka elections, not the one where he contested, but a lot of candidates said they would spend 20 crores in a constituency. When I went to Telangana, they said 20? We spend 50 crores per candidate. And if you're a real estate, a person, you would spend so much money on your, and they're the ones who have disposable income, let's say. So the money in elections is just mind-boggling. Yes.
Thanks for the conversation. I want, as we were speaking about the star anchors and the hatred they spew, I wanted to understand their psyche. Why do they behave the way they do? As you have spent, you have been in close quarters with them. So one, do they individually, you think the star anchors, they subscribe to that hatred and Islamophobia and all the Tukde gang and everything, all the ideology, they per se, they subscribe to that. So they push forward. Or two, they may not be per se willing or subscribing to that ideology, but they want to pander. They know the political masters want to listen to that narrative, so they are forced to do sort of that. Or three, they think that the audience to whom they are addressing, the audience want to listen to that kind of narrative and all the ideology, so they pander to the audience. So why do they do?
You know them much before I did.
You know those guys much before I did.
No, but you
know them much better.
Yes.
I think it's a kind of combination of things. I think that anchors want to stand out, to be different. That's how it started, as we discussed how it started. They start out by saying things which they think the audience wants to hear. They get a response from the audience and they think, hey, I'm onto something good. So they are catering to what they think the audience wants. It's a very easy thing for anyone to blame the viewers. That's what the viewer wants. We're just giving them what they want. It's easy to do that. Secondly, there are certain political environments which really reward, in many ways, people who will pander to the authority, who will pander to the ruling party, who will say the things that they want to hear, and who will take a line, who will refer to the Gen Z protesters as a mob, with a loaded word like that. They are rewarded in many ways. So it works for them. They may not have a deep ideological feeling, if that's what you're saying. They may not ideologically really hate the other. They may not feel that, they may be performing to some extent because they think it works. It could be that.
I think it's a very individual case by case thing. I know anchors who are deeply Islamophobic, who are extremely abusive in their newsrooms. Like there's this one guy, you just type Galika Gang on Twitter and you'll know who I'm talking about. He was the most abusive person I've seen in my life. And he's now condemning young people who are abusing a Jantar Mantar and Islamophobic, used to use slur words for Muslims. There is that kind who are just reflecting their own behavior. The other kind is what Maya is saying, that they're performative, but they also get power through this, they get money through this, right? There's a lot of money. Like there's a lot of news laundry, I think 2 days ago published a story about how much money channels have been given by various governments. So there's a lot of money stuck in this. That's another reason why Gauri Lankesh wrote many years ago that being in the right wing actually gives you power and money. And that's true. And that is also one reason why these people don't want this government to go out of power, because then they do not know what awaits them, right? So they will do everything they can to continue this cycle. Recently, we were told that a correspondent in Karnataka was offered 6 lakh rupees for writing a particular article on a politician on a website of a news channel, which I don't think anybody reads. Like the news channel website, who reads? So me and my colleague Pooja Prasanna were discussing, we should write 7 such articles. Our budget for the month is met, right? This is the kind of money that people are being offered now. So why not, right? For a lot of them.
Okay, thanks a lot for the insightful conversation. I just have a couple of questions. The last decade has seen a burst of digital and grassroots journalism. And I'll stand up, I guess. You can't see. So the last decade has seen a burst in the digital space and the grassroots journalism, especially because the mainstream broadcast journalism is losing its credibility. So where do you think the broadcast journalism is heading in the near future? And the second question is, Maya ma'am, you mentioned that I would rather be right than be first, which brings me to fact checking. Fact checking is a fundamental to journalism, or rather it was. But in today's world of fake news, that element seems to be missing. So who do you think holds the accountability in that situation, the reporter or the reader? And how do you think we should navigate that?
You know, there was a line about a certain channel, a certain private channel, which we used to say, never wrong for long. You know, they would come out with the news and say it. And then if it was not right, they would move on. No, we regret that we had a wrong statement. They would just move on. It's clearly in their interest to continue the narrative that they have. There is a certain amount of responsibility also on the consumer of the news, the person who is watching, the person who forwards an obviously fake AI WhatsApp forward. You have to have some sense, some responsibility. But I still think the primary responsibility is on the person creating it, the person who is putting that false news forward. And fact checking has now become an industry in India. I mean, in the sense, you have fact checking networks and agencies, and they're playing a vital role. But it should be a part of a media house. It should be a part of a journalist's psyche to fact check their reports. The fact that it's now outsourced, that somebody else is a fact checker, it's not a positive sign. But fact checkers are doing important work. I'm glad they're there.
I just want to add to your first question, what will happen to broadcast? Nothing. Because most broadcast channels are run by people with deep pockets. And this is just chiller paisa for them, what they're running their TV channels with. They don't care. They are having these channels for a specific purpose, right? It doesn't matter what is the public reaction to it, etc. One small thing, because Maya said, I'll tell you, in what I follow, if there's a breaking news and there is this horrible mainstream media house which has put it, I will still not share it. I will wait for somebody else, even if it's 5 minutes late. I mean, I'm not putting it on my own site, but I want to share it with someone or tweet it. I will wait for some sane organization to put it out, and then only. So even for us, right, we are also sort of propelling them forward, right, by distributing their news stories.
Hello. I just want to make this very quick. Maya ma'am and I have worked together at NDTV. And it's a delight, ma'am, to be here with my mother. It feels like a full circle, honestly. And we both have worked for an organization which I feel is, I think, the less said, the better. But I feel that, when I was sent from the Delhi office, I worked very closely with the Delhi office. So I know exactly the kind of pressure is put on bureau chiefs, and I know exactly what is wanted out of them. Maya has been a household name for us in our family, because every time we thought of news or Karnataka or Bangalore or politics, it was always Maya Sharma. So I think many of us can agree that nobody like her really to deliver the news in a sane voice. The second thing I want to say is that you gave me the room and the space for the 3 months that I was deputed in the Bangalore office to actually not focus just on the politics, but also do a startup series. And thanks to you and the push that you gave me, I was able to do stories with the Licious founder and the Razorpay founder. That kind of mentoring, I think, is very important for young reporters. And good stuff, if you remember. Good stuff, if you remember. Thank you so much, Maya ma'am. The question, though, however, I think all of us would like to ask here is, do you think that the same voice in which news can be delivered, have we lost it, or do we still have room to deliver news in India in a sane voice?
Thank you, Shanakshi, for all those very nice things. There's a book out which talks about that. It's a difficult question to answer. And in fact, it was surprising to me, like when I asked Danya, do you think television news would survive? And she gave the answer in the book that she gave here now, yes, it will, for different reasons. It will continue, maybe not in a form that we like, but it's really up to us as journalists, as news consumers, to try and bring back the values. Maybe not go back to the Doordarshan days or the what is gone, but to try and bring back the values which should be eternal. There are certain values which should always be there in a journalist, in journalism. That I hope can come back, maybe not in the form we're used to in a television channel, but that is really the
I think
focus.
for that to come back, you'll also need to have someone with deep pockets and a lot of sense about
Yes.
what they are contributing to.
And click on www.thenewsminute.com
Exactly.
/subscription.
Exactly. And a subscription, and to be able to put out now through a YouTube channel. So, say for example, if there was a 24/7 News Minute channel going, I'd have it on my computer the whole time, because I'd want to at least.
I
that's
missed
the
it during
news.
the CGB protests. I was telling, like, you want to watch a TV channel, what's happening, what's going
Yeah.
on. But
So
it wouldn't have been any
deep
point.
pockets, sense is the things, and you're looking again and you're seeing that now what's happened. Yes, cut quickly. Is that all these tech bros in America? They are on the side of the government and says, okay, we will censor you, we will stop you. So you're even that's that's what the deep pockets of the good sane deep pockets. If you're listening, that's what they are fighting. We understand, but please contribute to the News
Yeah,
Minute.
in fact, you should now see if your algorithms are changing. What you're going to see on Instagram from tomorrow onwards, you must take note and document it, because people are already starting to document how they're seeing different things now. Yes, final question. We have been told.
Yeah,
The
thank you
sign
all of
has
you
come.
for a delightful evening. My question is to Professor. Thank you. My question is to Professor Gowda. I wonder whether spokespeople, particularly a spokeswoman from a certain political party, is instructed to wage war with the news anchor right at the start, and whether she puts down what about trees dating back to Akbar.
Well, yeah, I'd suggest you switch the channel
Or switch off.
or switch off, tune into something else. Yeah, no. I think many, sort of spokespersons are trained possibly to provoke and to bring up all kinds of points which have no relevance in a forward-looking agenda, right? It's basically whataboutery at its finest. And, so I've been with, sort of a spokesperson who would test with me. He would come out with some provocative statement against the first family of my party, and he would see whether I would get angry. And if I did, then that becomes the party line from the other side. This is something that's, touches a nerve, that sort of a thing. So they're looking for more and more of these. But the basic idea is to divert, and rather than pay attention to the issues of the day, find some. In any case, if Akbar did something 500 years ago, why should you repeat it today? That's really the question that any sane person would ask.
No, we can't take any more questions. Sorry. So thank you very much, Mr. Gowda, Ms. Sharda. And I think we should end with Maya Sharma saying, Maya Sharma, Bangalore for NDTV.
In what has been an absolutely delightful evening discussing my book, which has made my heart full and warm and given me some hope, with camera persons Govind, Kumar and Manjunath at the Bangalore International Centre, this is Maya Sharma for all of you.